Do you ever feel like you are constantly spending money just to keep your home running? Would you believe me if I told you there are women who have learned how to run a home in a way that naturally kind of keeps money in? And the difference isn't necessarily income, it's in habits. Speaking of habits, this is one of my late winter and springtime habits. It's canning some chicken broth. And I thought we would talk about this today. I want to walk you through something that doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think. It's everyday habits that American women used to use to keep their homes fed, stocked, and running well without constantly spending money. Now, this isn't necessarily new information, it's maybe more like forgotten information. Now, these are the same habits that carried families through the Great Depression, through war times, through seasons where there simply wasn't enough, there wasn't extra. But these things can still work. Not in a trendy way, not in an all or nothing way. Just in a steady, faithful, this is how we run our home kind of way. What you see when you look at homes from even 50 or 75 years ago is that frugality, it wasn't something they turned on when things got hard. It was the way they did things. It was built into the structure of daily life. It was the default setting. It was just how things were done. And that created homes that were steady and resilient and surprisingly peaceful, especially in comparison to today. Because when you're not spending money on things you don't need, buying things just because they're convenient and replacing things that actually could be repaired, there is a whole different kind of calm that just settles into a home. All right, so let's get into it. The first tip that I had is keeping a well-stocked pantry. This is actually something that I walk you through and teach how to do in my Homemaker course. If you're interested in looking that up, you can find it on my website. I'll link to it below. But keeping a well-stocked pantry is one of the top tips. Early American homes, they didn't run to the store every few days. They kept staples on hand and they planned ahead. Flour, sugar, salt, dried beans, rice, oils, cornmeal, the basics. And they bought more when what they had got low. Not because it was a trend, because it made sense. A stocked pantry means you're not running out the door for one thing. It means you're not making impulse purchases because you're hungry and there's nothing at home. It naturally reduces your spending. The second tip is to cook once and eat multiple times. So a meal is never just one meal. That's the first thing that I really want you to hear. A roast chicken became dinner on Sunday and the chicken sandwiches on Monday, or a chicken salad. And then maybe they would take the carcass and make a big pot of chicken soup on Tuesday. Nothing gets wasted. Nothing super rushed. Every ingredient was respected because every ingredient costs something, and keeping that mindset really changes how you cook. So connected to these things, tip 3, pantry-based meal planning. Old-fashioned meal planning, it wasn't pick a recipe and buy all of these different ingredients that it needs. It was open the pantry, look at what's there and shop your pantry. Figure out what to make with what you have. Meals were built around what was already in the home. That one shift right there, it drastically reduces your grocery bill because you are using what you have instead of constantly chasing what a recipe tells you to go buy. And then you also save a lot of time when you do it that way too. Tip 4, home food preservation, which is what I'm doing today. I am pressure canning this broth for all summer long. We're going to be using this all summer and into the winter, and I'm also reducing the amount of things that are in my freezer by doing this. So this whole process, this pressure canning, it used to be normal. It was completely normal in pioneer homes, and it surged again during world wars because people understood something that we've largely forgotten. If you can preserve it now, you don't have to buy it later. And maybe, I know some of you say, well, they didn't pressure can back then. No, that's true. They used water bath canning and then moved into pressure canning, which there's a place for each one. If you're interested in learning more about canning, water bath canning, pressure canning, I do have a course that walks you through how to do these things on Patreon. But canning, dehydrating, fermenting your foods, and freezing them, these are all skills that when you learn how to do them properly and safely, they can stretch your food budget in such wonderful ways that are hard to fully calculate. When you buy a case of tomatoes at peak season, for example, it doesn't cost that much to process them yourself, and you can eat for pennies all winter, and that's real money. And a lot of times it's a lot healthier too, which when you're healthy and not sick, that is another way that you can save money. Speaking of which, I want to tell you about one of my favorite supplement companies and the sponsor that made today's video possible. You all know that I have been loving my Mary Ruth's Liquid Morning Multivitamin with hair growth, and it has been working so well for me lately. My hair, it feels thicker and fuller than it has in years. And I just feel so much better on the days that I actually remember to take this. But what I have not really shared is that my kids have been using Mary Ruth's too. They have been taking the kids' multivitamin gummies for about the same amount of time that I have been on the liquid multivitamin, and it's just become part of their daily routine. I think that the biggest thing that I have noticed is we've just had a smoother, healthier year overall with less sickness, which as a mom, I will take. And the kids genuinely love these. They are sugar-free, which I really appreciate, and they come in strawberry, papaya, and a super punch flavor. And my kids think they are a treat. I also like that they're actually getting some solid nutrition support in. Now there's a vitamin A for growth and development, vitamin C for immune support, vitamin D3 for bones and teeth, plus B vitamins to support energy, along with iodine and zinc. It's just an easy, no-fuss way to help fill in the gaps, especially on those days that aren't perfectly balanced, which is real life. So if you want to try these, I will have them linked below for you in the description and the pinned comment, along with my discount code. We love Mary Ruth's and highly, highly recommend them. My special code is Mountain Mama, and it's included with the links in the description box and pinned comments below. Another old-fashioned American tip is root cellaring and seasonal eating. Before refrigeration, food was stored in cool underground spaces. I remember reading about how in Farmer Boy by Laura Ingalls Wilder, how they would go out and in the wintertime, they would cut blocks of ice from the lake and they would bring it back and they would put it in their underground root cellars, and that was their refrigeration. And of course, I'm not saying that's what we need to do. Of course not, but we have ways of building root cellars now. In fact, I did a whole video about a month ago on our root cellar. So if you want to watch that, you can. It's got over 20 tips, or around 20 tips, root cellaring tips. So you can watch that. I'll link to it below. But people also used to eat seasonally, and they would do that because that's what was available, and it was healthier and it was a lot more affordable. Think about it. If you are getting strawberries locally in season versus having strawberries from Spain shipped to you when they're not in season in your area, it's going to cost more. So I love to, every time their berries are coming out, like the June strawberries, I try to find somebody to get them from. We actually have a friend that gave us a whole bunch of strawberry plants a couple years ago, and so I'm excited because this year we are going to have our own strawberries. Very exciting. But the point is eating seasonally as you can. Another classic, old-fashioned American frugal way to save money is using what you have first. It would seem like common sense, right? It's a lot harder to actually carry out than it is to say, though. I know it is for me. One way that I have found to do this, though, is to consistently clean out the fridge, consistently clean out the pantries, and consistently go through the cellar. There is another popular YouTuber, Lisa, from Farmhouse on Boone. I'm sure everybody's heard of her, but she said something once, and when she said it, I just thought that is so true. I love that because it has been my entire experience. And what it was is that in order to be a good homemaker, you have to kind of do it daily. And so that means repeating certain things that can get kind of mundane, but one of those things to repeat is consistently going through your areas and what you have, and you can save a lot of money doing this. Think about how you go to the store, you stock up, you buy things, And then you get so busy that you forget about those things. So by consistently going through what you have, making that a serious part of your homemaking, you can save so much money. Another frugal old American tip is to wear clothes longer and care for them. There is a sheet I saw once. I'm sure you can find a lot of them available now, but it had washing instructions. For example, t-shirts, you want to wash them after every wear. Jeans, on the other hand, you do not want to wash them after every wear because they wear out faster. There are certain things that can wear out faster if you don't wash them enough, and there are certain things that can wear out faster if you wash them too much. So knowing how to care for your clothes can help a lot. And of course, repairing, patching holes. So that takes us to the next tip, which is mending if you can instead of replacing. So we have a running joke in our home where my husband will get a hole in his socks and he'll be like, hey, you still haven't mended my socks. It's just been a running joke. We've been married for 22 years. And when we got married, he joked about how his mother would mend his socks. And he would say it in kind of a teasing, taunting way, like he was trying to challenge me to do that. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. Maybe go ask your mother, she'll do it for you. So I'm not going to mend socks. I think that is, maybe old socks 30 years ago were made different than they are now, but I think we all know that trying to mend socks in this day and age is probably only going to give you an uncomfortable lump in your sock, in your shoe, and it's probably only going to extend the life of the sock maybe a week. It's not worth it. But sewing, on the other hand, is knowing how to sew. I don't know how much money I have saved my family by having some sewing skills. I learned how to sew when I was a teenager. It was one of the homemaking skills that I was very excited to learn and enjoyed doing. I used to sew my own clothes. I would sew quilts for family members, and it was just a really special skill to learn. And nowadays, I don't have as much time to sew as I used to, but I've been getting more into it lately as my kids are getting older. I'm getting more time for things like that. And I found that homemade hot pads are way better than anything you buy from the store. I was going through hot pads on a regular basis. I mean, I do probably 5 to 6 times more cooking than the average American homemaker or household. I want my things to last. So I started making my own hot pads because I got tired of replacing them. Things like that. Curtains, for example, that's another one. If you can find secondhand thrift store sheets, you can make curtains and napkins and so many things like that. Another old American thrift tip is to thrift culture, hand-me-down. Secondhand is not trendy, I know, but it used to be normal, and for our family, it's normal. I joke about it, but the truth is that most of our home is either thrifted or gifted. There is a very small percentage of things that we own that we actually bought. Another tip is to save and reuse everything you possibly can. I like to save glass jars. I even save fabric scraps for things. I save packaging because it always comes in handy. Even containers. If you save your sour cream, your cottage cheese containers, see, we get them in the big, huge tubs because we're a large family, but we save those, and guess what? We freeze things in them. When you buy containers and you freeze items in them, a lot of times those containers don't last very long or they'll crack, I found. I like to save the cottage cheese, sour cream, yogurt containers, things like that, because if they crack, it's okay, it was free. But I save soups in them, broths, beans, all kinds of things like that, and I freeze them. We even, don't laugh at us, but we even save some of our feed sacks, and we'll use them in the garden, in the rows, to help cut back on weeds. Now, back in the day, feed sacks, of course, used to be made from cloth, and they could be reused for clothing. I think we've all heard of the flour sack dresses. All right, now we're going to talk about another tip, which is stretching ingredients. You can stretch meat across multiple meals. You're probably tired of hearing me talk about this if you've been around here for a while, but we stretch our ground beef, for example. We stretch it with rice, with grated carrots. You never know they're in there. We stretch it with zucchini. We stretch it by making soup with it. But there's other things you can stretch too. Coffee can be stretched with chicory, which is really good actually. It's so delicious. You can also stretch it with dandelion root. Milk and butter, they can't necessarily be stretched, but you can use them a little more carefully. And one tip that I have for you is to consider buying milk powder and reconstituting that for recipes like pancakes. So things like this were especially common during the Depression and wartime rationing. Another tip is to grow a garden, even if it's a small one. There are certain things that will not cost very much to raise yourself. Some things will cost too much to raise it yourself and to make it worth it. Like it just wouldn't be worth it. But a lot of things you can grow for less, even if it is just maybe some herbs in your windowsill. But even a small garden reduces grocery costs and can increase food awareness. Now, if you can't have a very big garden, I would look at one of the staples that you eat a lot of that cost you a significant amount and see about just maybe growing that one thing. Maybe you don't need a garden with like 25 different varieties of vegetables and things in it. Maybe you just need one garden with one or two things in it to help you cut down on your grocery costs for the upcoming year. One thing that I love to grow myself that I feel like saves us, maybe not a lot, but I know I'm making it far healthier, is tomatoes. When you can tomatoes in those tin cans, or when you buy them in the tin cans, that tin can leach into the tomato, especially since the tomato is acid. And I know some of the cans have that lining in it, but I'm not sold that that's very healthy. So I personally like to can my own tomatoes in jars because I know it's healthier and safer. I just trusted it more. And that is one thing you can do. But maybe for you, it's going to be something else. Maybe it's green beans or potatoes. But consider what your family eats a lot of and look into how much it would cost to grow that yourself. Another great tip is community sharing and bartering. Neighbors used to help neighbors. Tools could be borrowed, labor was shared, food was exchanged. This reduced the need for constant purchasing, and it also can increase friendship. Another tip is, of course, one you probably hear all of the time, but it's to cook from scratch. So I won't talk too long about that, but prepackaged food did not used to be the norm, and we all know this. Meals used to be built from basic ingredients, which is significantly cheaper than convenience foods. All right, let's talk about wood heat and fuel consciousness. A lot of homes rely on wood heat or carefully managed fuel use. That's how it used to be. Energy did not used to be taken for granted, but managed intentionally. This can really help cut down on your power bill. Within that, things like getting a clothesline. My boys, I'm so thankful. They just built me the most amazing clothesline right outside my door, not very far from where our laundry room is, and it's been so helpful. For families like ours with 8 people in the family, imagine how much time and electricity it takes to run a dryer when we do 2 to 3 loads a day to keep up. Well, to have that drying on a line, it goes a long ways as far as savings. Another tip is to consider trying to fix things when they break down before you buy new. So this is a really big shift from back in the day to now. Appliances, furniture, shoes. I'm always fixing shoes. Everything used to be repaired first if possible. Now, this needs to be, looked at with some common sense. There are some things that cost more to try to fix them than it would be to buy new. Unfortunately, that is the times we live in. Things are not made to last. They're made cheaply, made to be replaced cheaply and consistently, which is kind of a drag. I don't like it, but that's the way it is. So think about whether, really look into the pricing and make sure it actually is going to be cheaper to fix it versus just getting a new one. Another tip is to look into one income efficiency. Recently, I just watched a really, really good video. I highly recommend watching this video if you have the time. In the video, the man was talking about how when America switched from one income to 2 incomes, it is what caused such a dramatic inflation over time. Unfortunately, now that we're here and where we are, with the costs of goods and everything, that have rose essentially to match two-income households. It makes it harder today to be a low-income or a one-income family than it was 30 years ago. And people try to argue with me in the comments all the time. I mean, sadly, we seem to be living in a time where a lot of people forgot how to math. They forgot how to look up historical data. They forgot how to do economic or financial overviews. And I am definitely not an expert in any of that, but I'm old enough that I do remember when things were shifting. In fact, my beginning of my homemaking journey, I've been doing homemaking for a very long time. And in the beginning of my homemaking journey, I remember those first few years, it really was possible to live on one income, and it was possible to do it quite easily. But in the last, I don't know, maybe decade, things have been shifting. Thought it was just me until my husband and I went to the bank to talk to a financial advisor on how we could possibly start looking into creating a savings for when we're older. And the financial advisor drew us a picture, a then and now comparison, and it was very enlightening. And I highly recommend that anybody that wants to argue about what it was like then versus now, go talk to a financial advisor so they can draw you a picture too. But times are not the same. If you want to be a single income family today, it is possible. We have done it. The thing about being one today is that it's going to require significant more sacrifice than anybody you know. It's going to require more sacrifice than it did for women back in the 80s and 70s and 60s. For sure, 60s. I think one of the top questions that I see in all of the homemaking groups, I'm in quite a few homemaking groups. One of the top questions I see is women are constantly overwhelmed by how they're supposed to make this work. Women saying, I only have $20 to spend on groceries this week. Women going into the group asking, how are other families making this happen? And several women every week come in, and the comment sections are always flooded with women saying, same here. I don't know how to do this anymore. And my best advice in this area is just try to make it work as long as you can when your kids are little. And from there, if you need, try to look into a second income from home if possible. This is how we did things, and it's worked out for us. But if you are trying to make a single income homework, you need to study. You need to study all of the tips, all of the tricks, and employ them all and consistently build your homemaking skills. A frugal tip that I have next is kind of a fun one, and it's about meal planning. It's not necessarily meal plan, it is meal planning. I actually have a video coming out where I did exactly what I'm going to be telling you here. And it is to, when you go shopping, when you go to your pantry, when you go check out your freezers, plan your menu, your meal around what you find. One of my favorite things is to go to the store, look at what's on sale, get what I see on sale. For example, I recently just found chicken tenderloins for $1.97 a pound. So I snagged up 3 packages of those, and I came home and I made as many meals with those as I could. I think it is so fun to do that, to go to the store and challenge yourself to look at all the deals, or go to your pantry and see what you have and make something creative with what you have. That's one of my favorite ways to cook, honestly. I do not like following recipes. I like to be creative. I like to go and look in the freezers and the pantry and see what I can come up with. It's a lot of fun. When you start to put all of this together, look at it all together. It's not so much about saving money in a frantic way as it is about structuring a homemaking journey that is made to last and made to save. When your home is built around what you already have, what you can preserve, what you can reuse, you will find you'll naturally start spending less without feeling restricted, and you might even have money left over at the end of the week or the month. So if some of this feels overwhelming or like something you would like to slowly build over time, I do actually go deeper into all of this in my homemaking course. In Module 5 of my course, I walk through how to nourish your family on a budget and build a pantry, even if you're starting from very little or working within a tight budget. I also talk about homemaking and all kinds of different skills, including homemaking for the whole woman and taking care of your mental health as you are pouring out all the time to your family. So friends, the goal is not perfection. It's not doing everything at once. It's building a home that feels steady piece by piece, step by step. These habits that I've shared today are the kinds of habits that have helped American families do exactly that for generations. I hope you have enjoyed this video.